Tonight, we're stepping gently into the 20th century, into a world of crackling radios and crowded railway stations, of uniforms pressed in haste, and cities glowing under uncertain skies. We're travelling back to a time when ordinary lives were pulled into extraordinary currents, and the entire planet seemed to tilt toward conflict. The Second World War did not begin as a world war. It began as arguments, borders, promises broken in dimly lit rooms. It began as fear carried in newspapers, as speeches echoing through public squares, as families sensing that something immense was approaching, but not yet knowing its shape. From those uneasy years would rise armies that crossed continents, battles fought in deserts and oceans, and decisions that would redraw the map of the modern world. But tonight, we are not rushing toward explosions or headlines. We are walking slowly, listening, letting history unfold at its human pace. One voice, one street, one moment at a time. Wherever you are, whether the room is dark and quiet or softly lit, allow your breathing to settle. Let your thoughts drift like distant radio signals, fading in and out. There is nowhere else you need to be. This story has waited generations to be told softly. And when you're ready, we begin. Part 1. The war did not begin with explosions. It began with silence. A silence that stretched across Europe in the late 1930s. Tense, brittle, waiting for something everyone felt but could not yet name. In the Polish city of Krakow, 16-year-old Tomasz Nowak wakes before sunrise to the sound of tram wheels screeching along cold metal rails. The air smells faintly of coal smoke. His mother is already in the kitchen, slicing bread with the careful economy of someone who knows food must last. The radio murmurs quietly on the shelf. Voices clipped and formal. Germany again. Always Germany. The adults pretend not to listen closely, but they never turn it off. Tomasz does not yet understand geopolitics. He understands only fragments. That his father frowns more often. That conversations stop when he enters the room. That newspapers are folded quickly, as if the printed words themselves are dangerous. Outside, Europe is pretending to function normally. Cafes still serve coffee. Children still run to school. Couples still argue about money, marriage, and the price of meat. But beneath these routines lies a growing awareness that the world built after the First World War is cracking. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, had promised peace. Instead, it planted resentment. Germany emerged humiliated, economically shattered, politically unstable. Inflation spiraled so violently in the 1920s that families carried wheelbarrows of money to buy bread. Out of that chaos rose a man who understood how to weaponize anger. Adolf Hitler did not seize power overnight. He cultivated it. He spoke to crowds that felt betrayed, promising restoration, unity, pride. He blamed enemies, real and imagined, and offered simple answers to complex suffering. By 1933, he was Chancellor. Within months, democracy in Germany was dismantled from the inside. To many outside Germany, it still looked like politics. Disturbing politics, but politics nonetheless. People believed the storm would pass. They were wrong. By the time Tomasz walks to school that autumn morning in 1938, Hitler has already absorbed Austria into Germany. The Anschluss is presented as reunion, not invasion. Crowds cheer. Cameras roll. The world watches uneasily, but does little. Soon after comes the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a large ethnic German population. Hitler demands it. European leaders, desperate to avoid another world war, meet in Munich. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returns home declaring, "Peace for our time. Peace is purchased with territory that does not belong to them." Tomasz's teacher explains none of this directly. Instead, she assigns an essay. What is patriotism? The classroom grows quiet. The question feels heavier than it should. Outside, posters appear overnight. Flags multiply. Military parades become more frequent across Europe. Governments speak in careful language, but the message underneath is clear. Prepare. At dinner, Tomasz asks his father if there will be war. His father pauses longer than necessary before answering. There is always war somewhere, he says. The question is whether it finds your street. In August 1939, the answer arrives. Germany and the Soviet Union sign a non-aggression pact, an agreement that shocks the world. Two ideological enemies promise not to attack each other. Secretly, they divide Eastern Europe into spheres of influence, like gamblers splitting winnings before a card is drawn. Poland is on that map. On the morning of September 1st, Tomasz wakes to thunder that does not fade. The sky itself seems to roar. German aircraft slice overhead in tight formation, engines screaming. Bombs fall on railway stations, bridges, roads, the skeleton of the nation. Radios crackle with emergency broadcasts. Church bells ring wildly. Within hours, the illusion of peace collapses. This is Blitzkrieg. Lightning war. Germany's strategy is speed, shock, paralysis. Tanks punch through defences. Aircraft destroy communication. Infantry follows before the enemy can reorganise. It is warfare, redesigned for terror and momentum. Tomasz and his mother run to the cellar with neighbours. The building trembles. Dust rains from the ceiling. Someone prays loudly. Someone else laughs in panic. The sound is worse than the shaking, the endless mechanical howl above them. When they emerge, the city feels altered. Smoke drifts between buildings. Glass carpets the pavement. People move quickly, carrying bundles, pulling children, shouting half-formed instructions. No one knows where safety is. They only know it is not here. His father is gone, called to mobilize. The Polish army fights fiercely, but is outmatched. Within weeks, German forces advance deep into the country. On September 17th, the Soviet Union invades from the east, fulfilling the secret pact. Poland is crushed between two powers, like paper between closing doors. For Tomasz, the war is no longer abstract history. It is the empty chair at the table. Occupation transforms daily life immediately. German soldiers patrol streets that once belonged to civilians. Signs appear restricting movement. Jewish families are singled out, marked, humiliated. Businesses change ownership overnight. Fear becomes administrative, organized, systematic. Yet life insists on continuing. Tomasz delivers bread for a bakery, whose owner whispers coded news while handing over loaves. Resistance begins not with guns, but with information. Leaflets circulate. Hidden radios transmit forbidden broadcasts. Every act of listening becomes rebellion. Winter arrives early and hard. Coal is scarce. Food is rationed. Lines stretch for hours. The war spreads beyond Poland, but to those inside occupation, geography feels irrelevant. The entire world seems to have narrowed to survival. Meanwhile, in Western Europe, Britain and France declare war on Germany. Yet for months, little happens on their front. This period becomes known as the phony war, a strange lull where armies prepare but rarely engage. Newspapers still print maps. Politicians still deliver speeches. Civilians still hope diplomacy might intervene. It will not. In the spring of 1940, Germany invades Denmark and Norway, then the Netherlands, Belgium, France. The speed shocks observers. Entire governments collapse in weeks. Paris falls in June. Europe tilts. Only Britain remains openly defiant. Tomasz hears about these events through fragments, whispered conversations, smuggled newspapers, rumours that shift daily. Information under occupation is unstable. Truth arrives distorted, like voices carried through walls. But one thing is clear, even to a 16-year-old boy. This war is not temporary. It is reshaping the century. At night, he climbs to the roof despite curfew. From there, he watches the darkened city. Windows are shuttered to avoid attracting bombers. The stars look sharper without electric light. Somewhere beyond the horizon, armies are moving, borders dissolving, leaders making decisions that will ripple through millions of lives. He tries to imagine the future. He cannot. So he focuses on the present, the rhythm of boots on cobblestone, the hush of neighbours speaking carefully, the strange new vocabulary of occupation, words like ration, curfew, deportation. Language changes before history does. And Tomasz understands, dimly but unmistakably, that he is living inside a moment people will one day study. If he survives to remember it. Part 2. War has a strange way of becoming normal. Not accepted, never accepted, but absorbed into the routines of breathing, eating, waking. Humans adjust with terrifying speed. Within months of occupation, Tomasz realizes that what once felt impossible now feels ordinary. German trucks rumble through Krakow every morning at the same hour. The sound becomes a clock. Soldiers smoke in doorways that once belonged to shopkeepers. Posters bloom on walls overnight. Orders, warnings, lists of names. The city learns to read danger at a glance. And yet children still play. They play quieter, glancing toward uniforms, but they play. Life does not pause for catastrophe. It folds catastrophe into itself. By the summer of 1940, the war has shifted westward. Britain stands alone against Nazi Germany. From Tomasz's hidden radio, wrapped in blankets to muffle sound, comes the voice of Winston Churchill. Steady and defiant. The words are foreign, but their emotion crosses language. We shall never surrender. The Battle of Britain begins in the sky. For the first time in history, a nation's survival depends almost entirely on air power. German bombers cross the English Channel in waves, escorted by fighter planes. Their target is not only military installations, but cities, factories, homes, London itself. This is total war. Not soldiers alone, but civilians are now strategic targets. In Krakow, people gather secretly to listen to updates. Britain becomes a symbol more than a place. Proof that resistance is still possible. When news arrives that the Royal Air Force has held the line, a fragile optimism spreads like warmth through cold rooms. If Britain can survive, perhaps the war is not invincible. But survival comes at a cost. Throughout the autumn of 1940, German bombs rain down on London in what becomes known as the Blitz. Entire neighbourhoods burn. Families shelter in subway tunnels. Children are evacuated to the countryside. The modern city learns medieval habits, hiding underground, listening for distant thunder. Tomasz imagines those nights often. He pictures strangers huddled together beneath foreign streets, breathing the same fear he knows. The war is separating nations physically, but emotionally, it is binding civilians into a shared experience. Endurance. Meanwhile, occupation tightens. Jewish residents in Krakow are forced into a walled ghetto. Streets Tomasz once walked freely are sealed with brick and barbed wire. Friends disappear behind checkpoints. He watches families carry what they can hold. Blankets, pots, photographs. The architecture of a life reduced to bundles. No one explains what will happen to them. Rumours circulate like ghosts. Deportation, labour camps, relocation. The language is deliberately vague, bureaucratic words designed to soften brutality. But the fear is precise. One evening, Tomasz delivers bread near the ghetto wall. A boy about his age stands on the other side. Their eyes meet through a gap in the bricks. For a moment, the war shrinks to a single exchange of recognition. Two teenagers who should be worrying about school, girls, the future, now divided by policy and rifles. Tomasz slides half a loaf through the opening when no one is looking. The boy nods once. It is the smallest rebellion imaginable. Yet it feels enormous. Across Europe, acts like this multiply quietly. The resistance is not yet armies. It is gestures, smuggled food, hidden papers, false identities. Each action risks execution. Each action affirms humanity against machinery. In June 1941, the war fractures again. Germany invades the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa is the largest land invasion in history. Millions of soldiers surge eastward across a front stretching thousands of miles. Hitler believes the Soviet state will collapse in months. He underestimates both geography and desperation. The Eastern Front becomes a landscape of extremes, endless plains, burning summers, winters that freeze engines solid. Entire cities are erased. Prisoners starve in open fields. Civilians are caught between advancing armies like grass between grinding stones. For Tomasz, the invasion changes the emotional map of the war. The conflict is no longer confined to borders. It feels continental, a storm sweeping from horizon to horizon. German authorities grow harsher as resources are diverted to the east. Food shortages worsen. Forced labor increases. Young men vanish into work camps. Tomasz's name appears on a list. His mother folds the paper with trembling hands. "You must go," she says softly. "If you run, they punish the family." He leaves before dawn, carrying a small suitcase and a loaf of bread. The train station is crowded with boys pretending to be men. No one meets anyone's eyes for long. The train smells of sweat and iron and fear. They are transported west to work in German factories supporting the war effort. The journey takes days. When they arrive, the factory dominates the landscape. Smokestacks stabbing the sky, fences humming with electricity. Inside, machines roar without pause. The work is repetitive, exhausting, endless. 12-hour shifts blur into each other. Sleep becomes a shallow interval between commands. Here, Tomasz learns another dimension of war. Industrial scale. The same efficiency that produces automobiles and radios now manufactures destruction. Bomb casings move down assembly lines with mechanical indifference. War is not only fought at the front, it is built in places like this, by hands that would rather be elsewhere. Among the workers are men from across occupied Europe: French, Ukrainian, Czech, Dutch. They share fragments of language, inventing a rough international dialect of survival. Stories circulate during brief breaks. Some speak of resistance movements growing stronger. Others whisper of atrocities too large to comprehend. One older worker, a former teacher, tells Tomasz quietly, "This war will be remembered not for battles, but for what it reveals about people." Tomasz does not fully understand. Not yet. But he feels the truth of it in the way prisoners share crumbs, in the way guards sometimes look away to allow small mercies, in the way cruelty and kindness coexist inside the same fence. By late 1941, the war becomes global. Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. The United States enters the conflict. Newspapers explode with new maps. Oceans once distant now matter. The war has expanded beyond Europe into Africa, Asia, the Pacific. It is no longer a regional catastrophe. It is a world system collapsing and reforming under fire. In the factory barracks, the news produces a cautious hope. America means resources, industry, fresh armies. It means the possibility that the Axis powers are not unstoppable. But hope is fragile here. Every day looks the same. Smoke, metal, exhaustion. Time loses shape. Tomasz marks weeks by scratches on a bunk post. He worries that if he stops counting, he will dissolve into the routine and forget who he was before. At night, he dreams of Krakow. He dreams of tram wheels and bread slicing and his father's empty chair. Memory becomes a homeland no one can occupy. Outside the fences, bombers begin to appear. Allied aircraft target factories like this one. Sirens wail. Workers scatter into shelters. The ground shakes with impacts meant to weaken Germany's capacity for war. Each explosion carries a paradox. Destruction that promises eventual liberation. Tomasz crouches in the darkness, listening to bombs fall on the building that imprisons him. For the first time since occupation began, he allows himself a dangerous thought. The war might end. Not soon, not cleanly, but end. And that possibility, fragile as it is, becomes enough to carry him through another shift, another day, another night, measured in distant thunder. Part 3. By 1942, the war has outgrown comprehension. Numbers lose meaning. Maps blur. Headlines describe armies in the millions. Casualties in the hundreds of thousands. Statistics attempt to measure suffering, but suffering resists arithmetic. For the people living inside the war, it is not numbers that define reality. It is hunger, cold, fear, and the stubborn refusal to stop waking up. In the factory barracks, Tomasz feels time stretching thin. Months pass without landmarks. Seasons are detected only by temperature. Winter seeps into bones. Summer suffocates under smoke. Every day repeats with mechanical cruelty. Yet something is changing. The guards are more tense. Their voices sharper. Rumors circulate faster than food. Workers whisper about a battle in a city with a hard foreign name, Stalingrad. The Eastern Front has swallowed armies before, but this battle feels different. Even filtered through rumor, its scale is mythic. Entire divisions encircled, streets fought over building by building, soldiers freezing where they stand. The German advance has collided with something immovable. Not just Soviet resistance, but geography, weather, and exhaustion itself. For the first time, the word defeat is spoken aloud. Quietly, carefully, but spoken. At night, a Ukrainian worker named Mikhail tells Tomasz what he knows. His cousin is fighting near the Volga River. Letters stopped arriving months ago. Stalingrad is not a battle, Mikhail says. It is a grinder. Men go in. Nothing comes out. The factory continues to produce shells destined for that grinder. Tomasz handles metal casings knowing they may explode in the hands of men like Mikhail's cousin. War erases distance. Every object becomes a thread, connecting strangers in violence. And yet, inside the machinery, resistance begins to form. It starts small, a misaligned component, a delay in assembly, a tool misplaced, accidents that are not accidents. Workers exchange glances but say nothing. The sabotage is subtle, not enough to be obvious, just enough to matter over time. One evening, a French mechanic named Luc presses a scrap of paper into Tomasz's hand. Tonight, Luke whispers, after lights. In the barracks, a handful of men gather in the shadows between bunks. Luke explains the plan. Disrupt a production line. Not destruction. That would invite execution, but interference. Slow the machine. Bleed its efficiency. Tomasz listens, heart pounding. He has lived under occupation long enough to understand the stakes. If they are caught, punishment will not be measured. It will be exemplary. And yet he hears himself say, "I'll help." The decision surprises him with its calmness. Fear does not disappear. It simply steps aside for something heavier. The need to act. The sabotage succeeds. The next morning, the assembly line stalls repeatedly. Engineers curse. Supervisors shout. The delay ripples outward. Invisible but real. No one is caught. The men return to their bunks with faces carefully blank. But beneath the exhaustion runs a current of shared triumph. For the first time since his capture, Tomasz feels agency. He cannot end the war. He cannot free his city. But he can interfere. He can resist the logic that reduces him to a cog. Resistance spreads across occupied Europe in similar ways. Underground networks grow bolder. Railways are sabotaged. Intelligence is smuggled to the Allies. Civilians become soldiers without uniforms, fighting a war measured in whispers and shadows. But as resistance grows, so does repression. Reprisals are swift and merciless. Villages burned, hostages executed, public punishments staged as warnings. Occupation reveals its true nature, power sustained by terror. Meanwhile, beyond the factory walls, the Holocaust intensifies. At first, the workers hear only fragments. Deportations, camps, disappearances. The language remains euphemistic. Relocation, labor resettlement. But survivors begin to arrive. Skeleton-thin figures transferred between facilities. Their stories shred euphemism. Extermination. The word lands like a physical blow. Tomasz struggles to absorb it. Industrial murder feels impossible to reconcile with the world he remembers. Yet the evidence stands in front of him. Men whose eyes have seen something beyond explanation. One prisoner, barely alive, whispers a name. Auschwitz. The camp is not far. Close enough that smoke sometimes stains the horizon. Tomasz has seen it without knowing. Now the knowledge rewrites the landscape. Every plume becomes accusation. Every silence becomes heavy. The war is no longer only conquest. It is annihilation. Understanding this changes him. Sabotage becomes more than defiance. It becomes moral necessity. Across the world, the tide is shifting. In North Africa, Allied forces push Axis armies westward. In the Pacific, American carriers halt Japanese expansion. In Stalingrad, after months of unspeakable combat, the German Sixth Army surrenders. The news reaches the factory like lightning. Germany has lost an entire army, not retreated, not regrouped. Lost. The psychological effect is seismic. Guards bark louder to compensate. Workers exchange cautious glances. Hope, long suppressed, returns with dangerous intensity. Hope is risky. It invites disappointment. But it is unstoppable now. The war has cracked. And through the crack, the future becomes visible. Not certain, not near, but possible. One winter night, as snow muffles the world, Allied bombers return in force. Sirens scream. The factory shudders under impact. Explosions tear open buildings that once felt indestructible. Tomasz runs with the others toward a shelter. The sky pulsing white and orange above him. The bombing is chaotic, terrifying, magnificent. When it ends, part of the factory is gone. Production halts for days. In the sudden silence, Tomasz stands among ruins and feels something unfamiliar. Relief. Destruction in this moment is liberation wearing a violent mask. The machine that held him has been wounded. The war that consumed continents is beginning to consume its architects. He knows it is not over. He knows suffering will deepen before it ends. But standing in the cold air, smoke drifting like ghosts, he understands that history has turned. Empires are mortal. And the war, vast and merciless as it is moving toward an ending. Somewhere beyond the fences, beyond the horizon, the world is preparing to rebuild. He does not know what that world will look like. But for the first time in years, he believes he might live to see it. Part 4. By 1944, the war sounds different. It no longer feels endless. It feels loud. Bombers cross the sky daily now. The rhythm of explosions has become routine, like weather. Factories are rebuilt, struck again, rebuilt, struck again. Germany is running on momentum and fear. The illusion of invincibility is gone. What remains is stubbornness. In the barracks, the men mark time by rumours. The Allies have landed in France. At first, it sounds like wishful thinking, another story invented to survive another week. But the guards confirm it without meaning to. Their conversations grow frantic. Maps appear in offices. Trains move constantly, hauling troops west. The invasion has a name. Normandy. D-Day. Even filtered through distance, its scale is staggering. Thousands of ships, tens of thousands of soldiers. The ocean itself transformed into a battlefield. Europe is opening a second front, and the German war machine is being forced to fight on two collapsing edges. Tomasz hears the news in fragments, assembled like a puzzle. He imagines the beaches, waves red with blood, men running toward gunfire, the air vibrating with artillery. He does not romanticize it. He understands what invasion costs. But he also understands what it means. The cage is cracking. Resistance activity surges. Sabotage becomes less cautious. Workers begin slowing production openly, daring punishment. The guards respond with brutality, but their violence feels reactive now, not absolute. Authority has lost its certainty. Then comes another whisper, carried by a new prisoner from Poland. Warsaw is fighting. The city Tomasz fled has risen. The Warsaw uprising is not a rumor. It is a scream. Civilians, underground fighters, teenagers with homemade weapons. They are battling German forces street by street. The goal is impossible and yet undeniable: to reclaim the city before the Soviets arrive. Tomasz sits on his bunk after hearing this and feels the past rush back. He sees Warsaw as it was. Markets, tram bells, the smell of bread, his mother's voice. Now that city is burning in rebellion. He wants to believe they will win. He also knows how Germany punishes defiance. Weeks pass. The uprising holds, then falters. Supplies run out. Buildings collapse. Civilians are massacred. When Warsaw finally falls, it does not surrender. It is dismantled. Entire districts are destroyed systematically. The city becomes a warning carved in rubble. The news breaks something inside him. War has taken his present. Now it is erasing his memory. And yet the front continues to move. From the east, the Soviet army advances like a storm. From the west, Allied forces push through France and into Germany itself. The Reich is being compressed. Every day shrinks its territory. Every day multiplies desperation. Inside the factory, the guards grow unpredictable. Some disappear overnight, reassigned or fleeing. Others drink heavily. Discipline unravels. The system that held the prisoners rigid begins to wobble. Then, one morning, the sirens do not sound. No orders, no guards at the gate. The factory is abandoned. At first, no one moves. Silence is suspicious. It feels like a trap. The men wait hours before daring to approach the perimeter. The fences are intact, but the watchtowers are empty. Footprints lead away from the compound in chaotic trails. The guards have fled. The realization spreads slowly. Then all at once, they are alone, free, but stranded in a collapsing country, still at war. Tomasz steps beyond the gate with trembling legs. The air feels different, not safer, just wider. Freedom is not triumphant. It is disorienting. There is no plan, no authority, no clear direction. Only the knowledge that captivity has ended. Groups form immediately. Some head west, hoping to reach Allied lines. Others turn east. Tomasz joins a small cluster, moving toward Poland. The journey is brutal. Roads are clogged with refugees, soldiers, wreckage. Entire towns stand empty. Windows blown out. Streets littered with abandoned belongings. Germany looks like a civilization interrupted mid-sentence. They walk for weeks. Hunger becomes constant. Shelter is improvised. Yet everywhere they go, signs of collapse multiply. Columns of German civilians flee advancing armies. Prison camps stand open. Skeletons wander roads in striped uniforms, liberated but barely alive. Then Tomasz sees the camps. Not from rumor, not from whispered description. From the road. Barbed wire, watchtowers, the smell of decay carried on wind. Allied soldiers move among the survivors with stunned expressions. The prisoners emerging from those gates look less like people than shadows that forgot to disappear. The scale of horror is undeniable now. The war has revealed its deepest crime: industrial death, calculated cruelty, a system designed to erase entire populations. Tomasz cannot process it fully. No one can. Even the liberators stare, as if language itself has failed. Photographers document what words cannot hold. The world will need proof. It will need evidence strong enough to resist disbelief. He walks past in silence, carrying the knowledge like a weight that will never lift. By May 1945, the war in Europe ends. The announcement arrives without ceremony. A soldier shouts it from a passing truck. Germany has surrendered. The Third Reich has collapsed under the pressure of its own violence. People cheer. Others cry. Some simply sit down, unable to translate the moment into emotion. Tomasz feels quiet. Victory belongs to nations. Survival belongs to individuals. His war does not end with surrender papers. It ends when he reaches home. If home still exists. The journey into Poland is a return through ruins. Cities flattened, railways twisted, villages missing entire generations. He recognizes landmarks by geography rather than architecture. Memory fills gaps where buildings once stood. When he reaches Warsaw, he does not recognize it. The city is a skeleton. Streets are familiar only in shape. Everything else has been erased. He walks through districts reduced to rubble and wonders how memory can survive when its physical anchors are gone. He finds the site of his childhood home. Nothing remains but foundation stones. He stands there a long time, listening to wind move through empty space. The boy who fled in 1939 cannot return. That world is sealed. What remains is not restoration, but continuation. Survival is not the same as recovery, but it is enough to begin. Around him, people are already rebuilding, clearing debris, raising walls, reclaiming streets from history. The war has ended, but the work of living resumes immediately. Humanity refuses pause. Tomasz joins them. He lifts bricks. He shares food. He speaks with strangers who carry the same haunted look. Every conversation begins with the same question. Where were you? The answers form a map of suffering. Camps, fronts, factories, hiding places. Each story confirms the same truth. The war touched everyone. No one escaped unchanged. Years later, when historians compress World War II into dates and treaties, they will miss this texture. The war was not only strategy and politics, it was millions of individual survivals stacked together. It was hunger endured quietly, fear managed daily, small kindnesses exchanged in darkness. It was Tomasz. It was everyone. He will live the rest of his life in a world shaped by those 6 years. Cities rebuilt, borders redrawn, nations reborn. The war will become history, then memory, then myth. But inside him it remains immediate. a second heartbeat as measuring time differently. And yet, he marries. He laughs. He watches children play in streets that once burned. This is the final victory no army can claim. The persistence of ordinary life after catastrophe. The war tried to end the future. The future arrived anyway.